I know the world never really slows down. Maybe you're just passing by, in between 100 other things. And maybe, like me, you're carrying something no one else sees. So, if you're still here, even for just a few seconds, thank you. I'm telling this story not to prove anything, but because someone once told me, the longer you stay silent, the easier it is to forget who you are. I just hope that somewhere in these words, you might find a small reminder that you're not alone. And if you feel even a little of that, a quiet tap on the like button lets me know someone out there is still listening. The pews were filled with black lace and shallow sobs, but no one looked at me. I stood in the back, technically family, practically invisible. My coat still smelled faintly of turpentine and lilacs, the last painting I worked on drying at home, unfinished. I had painted it for her, but today, even her name felt like a stranger's on their lips. The stained glass windows cast a kaleidoscope of color onto the marble floor, but it all felt muted, like I was underwater, watching someone else's life unfold in front of me. Rachel, my cousin, wore pearl earrings and a performative sadness. She gave the eulogy. She said Grandma Evelyn was a woman of discipline, class, and legacy. Then she cried on cue. I watched her dab her eyes with a lace handkerchief I recognized from Grandma's nightstand. I didn't know she'd taken it. No one had told me anything. When the priest asked the family to come forward with remembrances, my foot moved instinctively. But then came the voice. Only immediate family, dear. Aunt Meredith. I hadn't seen her since the hospital. I froze. My fingers curled at my side, but I didn't speak. Didn't argue. I just stood there, my breath thick in my throat. Even Mom didn't look at me. She sat beside my father, straight-backed, as if the truth might spill if she leaned too far. So I stayed, near the pillar, by the cold, by the silence. That's when it happened. Father Alden paused mid-blessing. His fingers fumbled inside his robe and pulled out a white envelope. Thick. Hand-addressed. He looked at it for a long time before speaking. This, he said, voice steady but softer than before, was given to me by Evelyn 2 weeks before she passed. She asked that I read it at the conclusion of today's service. A ripple spread through the pews. My mother sat up straighter. Rachel's hand fell from her cheek. The priest broke the seal. His eyes scanned the letter quickly. Then he cleared his throat and began. If you are hearing this, I have already left the world, and likely the room has grown too quiet or too loud. Either way, this is for Anna, to my granddaughter, who may have been seated too far back to hear this without a microphone. Let this letter carry my voice to her, because it's time the silence ended. My heart clenched, and for the first time that day, all eyes were on me. But I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I simply listened, because finally, I was being spoken to. And the words were just beginning. They always said I looked like Grandma Evelyn. The shape of the jaw, the quiet eyes, the way I tilted my head when I was thinking. But even that compliment came with conditions. You've got her stubborn streak, too, my father once muttered when I dared to challenge him at dinner. I was 15. He was pouring wine he never let me taste. That was the kind of love I got. Measured, monitored, muted. I used to wonder if I was adopted. At family reunions, I'd get placed at the kids' table, even after I turned 17. Rachel gave a speech at Grandpa's retirement party. I wasn't even asked to help clean up. And when I got into the Art Institute with a partial scholarship, Mom didn't say, "Congratulations." She said, "I just hope you can make rent with that." They never hit me. They just erased me. Little by little, with every photo I wasn't in, every group chat I wasn't added to, every accidental oversight, like the time they planned a surprise birthday dinner for Rachel and told me it was a casual get-together. I showed up in jeans. Everyone else was in silk. Even Grandma's love in those moments felt like a private candle, flickering but hidden. But there were clues. Like how she always asked about my art, even when the rest of the family rolled their eyes. How she once pulled me aside after Christmas dinner and said, "You have vision, Anna. Don't let their noise blur it." I remember that Christmas well. I gave her a painting of her garden in spring. Watercolors, soft lines, tulips dancing across the canvas. She took it with both hands and held it like something sacred. My father took one look and scoffed, "Would have been better with a frame." Later that night, I found the painting tucked behind the piano. No one said anything. The next morning, it was gone. Weeks later, Grandma mailed me a picture. The painting was hanging above her bed. In the photo, she was smiling. No one else in the house ever mentioned it again. They pretended I wasn't part of them, but Grandma always reminded me that I came from something deeper, something invisible, but real. Roots don't need permission to grow, and mine were quietly reaching toward the truth. After the funeral, the silence followed me home like fog. I stood in my studio, half-painted canvas untouched, brushes dry in their jars. I looked around the room and everything felt paused. Like time itself was waiting for me to catch up to something I hadn't yet realized. That's when I opened the old chest under my bed. Inside were the letters. 27 of them. All from Grandma. All written over the last year. All unopened. Because I had never received them. Each envelope had my name, my address, even my little sunflower stamp she loved to draw next to the return label. But the postmarks, they were never sent. No stamps, no smudges, just careful folded paper. Prayers with no wings. I called the house. Rachel answered. "Oh," she said, pretending surprise. "You mean the letters Grandma left on her desk?" "Yeah, we found them when we cleaned out her room. We figured they were drafts or something." She laughed. "They're sweet. She really loved you." That word, drafts, sat in my chest like lead. They never intended to send them. And then I remembered something odd. A month before Grandma passed, I called her and got a strange voicemail. It wasn't her voice. It was Rachel's. "Hi, you've reached Evelyn's line. She's resting. Please leave a message and we'll pass it along." I left messages anyway. No one ever called back. At the time, I thought it was illness, age, or maybe I'd simply drifted out of orbit like I always seemed to. But now, things didn't add up. I decided to visit Mrs. Ellis, Grandma's neighbor. She opened the door in a blue robe and hugged me like I'd been gone years. "She asked about you every day," she whispered, eyes watering. "Told me she'd written you again. Said she hoped you'd come visit soon." I swallowed hard. I never got her letters. Mrs. Ellis blinked. "But she gave them to Rachel to mail. Every Sunday, after tea." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared past the rose bush lining her fence, to the house next door, where Grandma once knelt in the soil, humming lullabies I now only remembered in fragments. Something was wrong. Not cruel, calculated. And I had no proof. Just a tangle of coincidences, stitched together by silence. But then the priest read her letter, and I realized I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of my studio, surrounded by Grandma's unopened letters, trying to read them all at once. Ink smudged where her hand had trembled. Sunflowers doodled in the corners like she always did. Each one told a story about her garden, her memories, about me. She called me my brave girl. She said she missed my laugh, my paintings, the way I used to sketch birds on napkins when I was bored at church. But one letter was different, the last one. It was sealed in a thicker envelope, cream-colored, wax-stamped. It wasn't like the others. On the front, she had written in firm, slow cursive, "If you are reading this, they've already turned the tables." My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a letter, 3 full pages, and a small, tarnished key. I read slowly, carefully. Every word lit something in me that had long gone dim. "They told me you stopped writing, that you moved on, that you didn't want to see me. But I knew better. I smelled the lies before I saw them. I left this with Father Alden because I feared my voice would be silenced before my story could reach you." The key opens the oak box in the attic, the one I told everyone had nothing but linens. But you remember? You always remembered. "Go home, Anna. Go to where they tried to erase you, and find the pieces they couldn't hide." I pressed the key into my palm until it hurt. I could still see the oak chest in my memory, tucked in the attic of her old cottage, covered with dust and floral quilts. The one Rachel once told me just had old junk. It wasn't junk. It was a vault, a message, a warning, a weapon. 2 days later, I drove out to Grandma's place. The new owners hadn't moved in yet. The lawn was uncut, the porch light still broken. The way she left it, I still had the spare key. The moment I stepped inside, the air changed. It smelled like lemon tea and rosewater soap, like her. I climbed the attic stairs. Each step creaked like it was. I waited until the day of the estate settlement. Rachel had arranged it. Of course she had. Polished, poised, controlling every detail like always. It was being held at the family law firm downtown. Sleek marble floors, oversized windows. The kind of place where people dress in confidence and soft gray tones. I wore black jeans and Grandma's scarf. Not because I wanted to make a statement, because I didn't need to anymore. When I walked into the conference room, the temperature dropped. Aunt Meredith looked up from her phone and blinked as if I were a ghost. My father set down his coffee slowly. Rachel turned to the lawyer, already on edge. "She's not supposed to be here," she said. The lawyer, Mr. Calloway, didn't flinch. "Actually," he said calmly, "she's the reason we had to reconvene." He gestured to the chair at the end of the table. "Miss Anna, if you'd take your seat, please." I sat without a word. No one smiled. No one greeted me. But everyone stared. They thought they'd locked me out. They thought silence could be sealed with signatures. What they didn't count on was Grandma planning ahead. I placed the leather-bound journal on the table. Beside it, the handwritten will. Calloway cleared his throat. "This document," he began, unfolding the pages, "was verified last night by handwriting analysts. It is dated 4 weeks after the version read at the funeral." He looked around the table. "And it supersedes the previous version in both content and intention." Rachel's face went pale. "What does that mean?" Calloway adjusted his glasses. "It means this version distributes the estate differently." Silence. Aunt Meredith blinked rapidly, fingers clutching her handbag. My father coughed. Rachel leaned forward, voice sharpening. "She was sick when she wrote that. Confused. It's clearly coerced." "It's written in perfect cognition," Calloway interrupted. "In fact, Mrs. Evelyn recorded a short video verifying the contents he turned the laptop on. There she was, Grandma, wearing her blue cardigan, sitting on her garden bench. Her voice soft but firm. If you're seeing this, it means Anna found what I left for her. It means I was right to trust the quiet one." The video ended. The only sound in the room was the soft hum of the laptop fan. No tears, no raised voices, just stunned, sterile quiet. Calloway closed the laptop gently, as if it might still be listening. Then he turned to me. "In accordance with the revised will, Mrs. Evelyn's estate, her cottage, remaining financial assets and the copyrights to her unpublished work will be transferred solely to Anna Delaney. I didn't react. My heart was racing, yes, but my face stayed still. Across the table, Rachel's mouth opened, then closed. Her nails tapped the wood, slow and deliberate. She left me nothing? She asked, voice tight. Calloway looked at the page again. There is a note addressed to you, Miss Rachel. Shall I read it aloud? Rachel didn't answer, but she didn't stop him either. Rachel, you were always clever, but cleverness without kindness is noise. I wanted you to lead with compassion. Instead, you led with control. You are strong, but I no longer trust that strength with what I built. Aunt Meredith gasped. My mother said nothing. Her gaze fixed on her lap like the truth might crawl out of her purse and bite her. Calloway turned to me again. There is one final letter. For you, Miss Anna. From your grandmother. He handed it to me. I opened it slowly. Grandma's handwriting danced across the page. My dearest Anna, they always said you were too quiet, that you faded into corners. But you and I knew, quiet is not the same as weak. You watched. You remembered. You saw the things no one else did. That's why I chose you. Not for revenge, but for renewal. Use this not to rise above them. Use it to grow something better. I held the letter to my chest, and for the first time in years, I felt seen, not as the forgotten one, not as the black sheep, but as her choice, not by blood, but by legacy. The room didn't explode. It cracked, quietly, bitterly. Rachel pushed back her chair. She was manipulated. This is a setup. Calloway stayed neutral. The documentation is verified. The decision is legally binding. She was dying, my mother whispered suddenly, still staring at her hands. She wasn't in her right mind. She was more lucid than anyone here, I said softly. My voice didn't need volume. It had weight now. My father finally looked at me. His eyes were blank. Not angry, not sad, just void. Like the man who used to read the paper in silence had nothing left to hide behind. You always took things too personally, Anna, he said. I almost laughed. She left me her life's work, her home, her name. You think that's personal? Number this is correction. Aunt Meredith scoffed. You're enjoying this. I turned to her. I'm not enjoying anything. You're confusing peace with pride. Rachel stood up, her chair scraping against the tile. All these years, she spat. She pretended to love us equally, but clearly she was playing favorites. I looked at her then, really looked. There was panic behind her posture. Not grief, not betrayal. Control, lost. She didn't choose me because I was her favorite, I said. She chose me because I never asked her to be anything other than herself. Rachel's mouth twitched. You were always her pet project. No, I said calmly. I was her witness. That silenced her. Calloway stood, gathering papers. If there's nothing further, he said, tone clipped, we're adjourned. Everyone filed out slowly, awkward, stiff, like guests leaving a party that had soured. My mother paused at the door. She didn't look at me, just said, You're going to regret this one day. I folded Grandma's letter back into its envelope. I regret trying to become small enough for this family to love, I said. She flinched, then left. And just like that, I was alone. But not lonely, because silence, when chosen, becomes sanctuary. That night, I walked through Grandma's cottage barefoot. The floor creaked in familiar ways. The kitchen still smelled faintly of cinnamon and lemon oil, as if the air remembered her better than they did. I opened every drawer. Not searching, just acknowledging. I didn't cry. I made tea instead. the kind she used to brew, chamomile with a pinch of clove. I sat at her old table, tracing the wood grain with my finger, letting the silence settle around me like a weighted blanket. They hadn't followed me. There were no calls, no apologies, and I didn't want one, because I realized something in that conference room, something sharp and soft all at once. I didn't need to be loved by them anymore. I needed to be real. Real in my grief. Real in my growth. Real in the absence of their approval. They had made me beg for scraps of affection, perform smallness, offer pieces of myself in exchange for a seat at a table that was always set for someone else. But Grandma had flipped the table, and now I had space. That night, I pulled out the old notebooks from the oak chest, her story drafts, her sketches, and beside them, a folder labeled in her hand, for Anna, if she ever dares. Inside were blueprints, lesson plans, ideas for a community art garden, her dream. She had left it unfinished. I smiled. I dare, Grandma, I whispered aloud, voice steady. I do. And in that moment, I didn't feel victorious. I felt released, like a weight I'd forgotten I was carrying had finally slid off my shoulders. There was no need to retaliate. No speeches, no Instagram captions. Only this, a quiet severing, a soft, clean break. The end of pretending, the beginning of everything else. The town council approved the renovation within 2 months. I kept the cottage intact, its bones mattered, but transformed the old storage barn into a studio space. Wide windows, paint-streaked floors, easels lined up like open invitations. I called it the Evelyn House. No one from the family ever visited, but people came, quiet teenagers, grieving mothers, retired teachers, people who didn't need to be fixed, just seen. I offered them paint and space and silence. Some of them cried on the first day. Some didn't speak for weeks. All of them returned. I hung Grandma's original painting, the one I gave her years ago, at the entrance. Underneath it, I framed a quote from her journal. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you build into others. I taught free workshops on Sundays. The first one was on sunflowers, just like the ones she drew in every letter. Each child painted their own version, some wild, some perfect, all radiant. Sometimes I'd walk the garden path she loved, the one we planted together when I was 10. The lavender bloomed early that spring. I clipped a few stems and left them on the bench where she used to read aloud to me. She wasn't a ghost here. She was breath. She was roots. She was in every brushstroke, every laugh that echoed in the converted studio, every quiet thank you I heard whispered into the walls. One evening, I found an old cassette player in the attic. Inside it, a tape labeled "For Rainy Days" with Anna. I played it. Her voice crackled through the speaker, reading poetry, laughing at herself when she mispronounced a line, humming at the end. I sat on the floor, knees to chest, and listened to the woman the world never fully understood. But I did. I didn't post about the project. I didn't send invites. I just lived it, because some stories aren't told with fanfare. Some are whispered into open hands and grow from there. Morning light pours through the kitchen window. It falls across the hardwood in soft amber ribbons, warming the steam that rises from my mug. The cottage is quiet, but not empty. It hums now, with memory, with movement, with meaning. The garden outside is beginning to wake. Sunflowers stretch toward the light, their petals still damp with dew. I watch them, barefoot, wrapped in Grandma's cardigan. There's no music playing, no voices, just the wind threading through the leaves and the rhythm of breath I no longer have to hold in. I pick up one of the children's sketches left on the table yesterday. A crayon drawing of a house, messy but brave, with stick figures smiling in front. On the back, scrawled in purple, "Thank you for making space." I place it on the fridge next to my own, a watercolor I painted last week. Abstract, bright, unafraid. There is no ceremony here, no applause, no inheritance party or champagne toast. Just soil beneath my nails. Just the click of a studio door unlocking for the first workshop of the day. Just the quiet joy of knowing I belong to no one's definition but my own. I walk outside. The grass is cool. The wind lifts my hair like a gentle question. I pause at the gate, looking back at the cottage once more. It isn't a monument. It's a beginning. I whisper to the wind, to her, to myself. He didn't leave me money. He left me space to be. And the wind answers, not with noise, but with peace. The end.